Welcome. We're with Shaun Bunn, the Chief Executive of Empire Metals. Back with Shaun in just a minute. Let's just introduce the company. It's an exploration and resource development business which, what it calls as a multi-commodity project portfolio comprising various gold interests in Australia and Austria. The strategy is to develop a pipeline of projects at different stages, and the current focus is on the Eclipse gold project in Western Australia, with the goal to expand through the addition of further projects in the region to develop a wider portfolio of precious metals assets. Let's turn now to Shaun, who's with us with more on this.
Yes.
Welcome. Now, you've been in the metals business, I think, about 35 years now, 25 of which has been in gold.
Exactly. No, did my degree through the School of Mines in Kalgoorlie, so I started at a very young age in the gold mining industry.
And you've been at Empire now a year.
Yes, just come up to my first anniversary.
So what's it been like? How quickly was it to get your feet under the table? You took over from Mike Struthers. We spoke to Mike just before you took over. He transformed the company, I think, from Georgian minerals or metals, didn't he, into what it is now?
So initially, when Mike was leading the company, he was obviously focused on the Georgian assets. They were, it was an exciting time for the company at that stage. But of course, what we saw was that the ability to work in that environment, the ability to get access to the ground, cooperation with a joint venture partner, that was extremely difficult. And so I think, Empire, when it looked to where it could rebuild, refocus, obviously thought about a number of jurisdictions, but Australia represents still a very exciting, very safe jurisdiction for mining companies to not only discover a project, but to bring it through development and into production. And that's the key, I think. That's the real key for Empire. Safe jurisdiction. We're looking to grow a large portfolio down under. And, when I joined the company, being an Australian-based developer, it was with the view that we would, discover a resource, discover a copper gold target that we've been looking for, and get into production ultimately.
Well, let's pick these projects apart. As I said, there are different stages of development, and I know that we've recently just seen a drill update from Eclipse, for example, which I believe is one of the most advanced projects in the portfolio. Is that right? Eclipse
was the first project that the Empire took on board when we moved out of the Northern Hemisphere. So Eclipse has over 10,000 metres of drilling that we've completed, 120 odd drills holes that we've put into that. So it's advanced exploration project now for us. We're mapping that carefully, getting the resource technology that we need, the model, building a 500 metre mineralised lode that we can target. So it's an exciting phase for the company at Eclipse. But we then added on the Jindalby project. Now, the Jindalby project, it's an adjacent project. It tripled the size of the exploration camp at that stage, and it has over 100 old historical gold workings. 110, 120, 140 years ago, they were developing small gold targets here, mining 24 grams per tonne, nearly an ounce. So it's high grade, scattered old mine shafts across these two licence areas.
Surely, why did they stop mining there? I mean, there must have been a reason why they stopped.
The old boys, the miners were basically hand mining. They were chiselling away down. It was real artisanal work. So they were using battery recovery techniques to get the gold out. So really, what you were dealing with was they were targeting this high grade seam, 20 grams plus. But adjacent to that, in the veins themselves, the gold is 2, 3, 4, 5 gram tonne grades. So it's still in these days highly profitable. But in those days, I guess they would have treated that as low grade. And
they're quite close to the surface.
They all exposed to surface. But what we think is very exciting is that we've started to track underneath. So when we started exploring, the majority of the early drill phases were shallow, looking in the regolith, which is the upper zone, the oxidised zone. We found these vein systems, but they were quite low grade. And part of the theory was that there's been some mobilisation of the gold. The material weathers, gold's quite mobile. So we started to take the drilling deeper. And I'm really pleased to say the last drill campaign we did, which was a diamond drilling campaign, quite expensive, but gives you an image of the core, a picture of what's happening 200 metres down. And we were able to hit the vein system, the shear, 5 out of 6 holes. So we're literally drilling 250 metres down, bang, we hit it. So we've now technically, we believe, got a grip on that particular mineralised target. But what's more exciting in my mind is that with the advancement to the Jindalby licence, our very first campaign there, almost a very speculative, let's go and have a look at what we've got. 4 holes around Homeward Bound all hit stellar grades. We were hitting 3 metres of 10 grams up to 40 gram per tonne in metre intercepts. So it's a very different high-grade target. And that's exciting because what it does allow us to do is now go back in. We're fast-tracking. We raised some money recently to fast-track a drill campaign. We're going back in the next couple of weeks to hit that particular target. And we really would like to see us, a set of results that shows that we are expanding that high-grade zone around the initial shaft.
This is all actually quite expensive, I think, in terms of a small company like Empire. What are you doing to try and, one, mitigate the cost? Obviously, you want to keep this cash alive and working as long as possible. Exactly. Have you got a sort of a glide path and where you go with this money, how long it lasts, and what your thoughts are in terms of what you can do?
Well, when we set up the Australian focus, we had a couple of advantages to start with. The options that we took initially, most of the money would go into the ground. So what we've tried to avoid is now going into deals where we have to take a large part of our cash on hand and buy something. So the Century deals, which we recently announced, there were 3 major exploration camps we brought into the portfolio. Came at a very notional upfront cost, 100,000 Australian dollars, £50,000. So most of the investment there is going to go into the drill bit, into the exploration phase. And we basically come out of that after a couple of years with what we hope to see is at least 4 major exploration camps working at any one time, whether we're doing geophysics, geochemistry mapping, drilling, and keep the money that we've got, the cash on hand is more than sufficient to push us through this next 2-year period.
So this is just going to be Australia, isn't it? You're not talking yet.
We're only talking now Australia. So what we see.
Very quickly, how far away are all these different mining interests you've got? Australia's a big place. Australia is
a big place, and to me, I think so. 3 of the major portfolio, or 3 of the major camps within the portfolio, within what we call the Yilgarn Craton. And that's in Western Australia. It's a huge area of Western Australia. Takes up probably about 1/3 of the state. Right. So, you put most of Europe within the craton and have some spare. But we're working in 3 distinct, what we call terrains. So Jindalby, the Eclipse Jindalby project is in an area called Canalpi, and that's 55 kilometres north of Kalgoorlie, one of the, if not the world's greatest gold mining centre. Yeah. The Walton project, which is a greenstone target for us, an Archean greenstone belt, that's in the Southern Cross domain. So that's about 200 kilometres further west of Kalgoorlie, but in an area that is very well known for major gold and nickel and other base metal discoveries. So we're in 2 major historical camps, and we're very excited about getting on the ground in those old, if you like, well-known mining centres. But Pitfield's something completely different. And I'm really excited. Pitfield and Staveley, which are the other 2 in the copper in this copper gold portfolio, very excited. The Pitfield sits in something called a Yanduka Basin. I know this is, our listeners might be thinking, what the hell? But this is a Neoproterozoic era of geology, which is famous for copper belts.
Right.
So the copper belts of Zambia, the copper belts in what we call the Patterson Range in Australia, where there's big copper gold mines like Telfer, they all come from this particular geological event, if you like. It happened 500 million odd years ago, copper-rich impacts that came through at that particular time. So this is a very unusual area, but very well known for copper, and we already know that we've got an old copper mine adjacent to this particular license. So it's extremely exciting. We can't wait to get on the ground there and start drilling.
Spending money there.
We're flying the aeromags first. So we do a magnetic and an electromagnetic survey, geophysical mapping. It's a big area. I think we've got something like 600 square kilometres of licence there. So, we run and get on the ground and sort of start trekking away. We fly the area, we get the basement rock mapped, and then we start doing the soil chemistry. Now, there's already historical geochemistry sampling there. Over 7 kilometres of high-grade copper was picked up near surface. So we know we're on the cusp of something here at Pitfield. Very excited by Pitfield, and that will work. We got the planes going into the air within the next few weeks.
We've got to move on. There's lots obviously happening, but I haven't even started to talk about Austria yet. How big a bigger project is that going to be for the company?
Look, Austria was, I guess, one of the foundation stones that the company started with. So the licenses in Austria, high grade, again, precious metals, high grade, silver, gold, old workings, old underground targets within the Austrian Alps there. Now, our view on that at the moment is that's an environment that will require a long gestation period, a long time now to get that into production. You've got, we haven't even touched upon things like ESG today, but Austria is not the easiest place to suddenly go back and start mining. And so we talked a little bit about Georgia and I guess geopolitical risk that impacts there. In Austria, it's an area that we have high value on those assets. Internally, we think they're great, but is that the right area for us to continue to try and develop?
Well, I was going to ask. I'm not an investor in the company, but I'm like a lot of people watching this. I'm sort of dancing around the idea of getting into this sort of thing because obviously there's a lot of potential in what you're talking about here. Could I put it to you that perhaps maybe it might be a good idea, possibly at some point, looking at offloading Austria in order to focus on your Australian assets?
We would certainly contemplate if we, for the right deal. I think the Austrian assets, I said, are excellent, are an excellent part of our portfolio. But we will struggle to continue to work both that particular camp and the 4 camps that we've built in Australia.
This is the problem, of course, about small cap companies, is the fact you're diluting your efforts and everything else, the money available into different areas. Look, let's move on if we can and talk a little bit more about, first of all, the politics of Australia. It's changed recently, swung left. Does that make a difference to mining companies?
I don't think it makes a difference directly to mining companies. In the West Australian political scene, our state government's been a Labor government now for several terms and incredibly supportive of the mining industry.
Who wouldn't be? Of course, it's a mining economy, of course, obviously.
So,
But it is known for its leaning towards ESG. You mentioned ESG. Obviously, it's a big thing for mining companies in any event. Have you got extra burdens in terms of pressure being brought to bear on the new government because of ESG?
Not particularly. I think there's a recognition, a groundswell, and not just within Australia, obviously, but this groundswell towards, a more sustainable approach to primary industry. Obviously, the big drivers there are generally going to be, things like fuel consumption and the amount of energy that you burn, if you like, just getting the job done. But people who want to go to wind turbines, people who want to go to high electric vehicles, hybrid cars, you don't do that without copper, you don't do that without lithium, you don't do that without these rare earth components. So the mining industry is a critical factor in turning towards a green economy. And I think what we've got to do as as miners is start to be accountable for what is the carbon footprint that we create in terms of trying to produce key elements that will ultimately lower the emissions.
Yeah, of course, Australia is quite sunny. Do you use things like photovoltaic cells in order to generate
We have the highest uptake of solar in the world per capita. I mean, absolutely. And I think that will continue to be a small but important part of the energy solution. But we're talking about hydrogen production in Australia now. There's a big push to move away from fossil fuel type components. So I think it's going to take time. I don't think these things will happen overnight. But
and in the meantime, you've got to keep shareholders on board. I just want to bring up a share price chart. You're familiar with this, and it goes back to well before you were involved in the business. I mean, I'm talking about the highs here back in 2017, 2018. It's been flatlining, relatively speaking, since then. As I said, you are a small cap miner. You're trading at 1.3 pence at the moment on the AIM market. What do you say to investors that are in there and want more returns, and those that are maybe like me, possibly dancing around the idea about an investment? What is the appeal of getting in at this level now? What's it pricing in, and what do you think it should be pricing in the future?
Oh, look, I don't think the average punter out there, the average shareholder, or the people that might choose to invest have really been able to understand the new portfolio yet. So the acquisition of the 3 major projects that we just brought into the company is at a very early stage. They are greenfields exploration targets, but they're in incredibly prospective areas. So as I said, I talked a little bit about Pitfield and the potential there. Staveley, the Staveley Arc in Victoria, which is the 4th of the project areas. That's a recent discovery by one of the peers there, a company called Staveley Minerals, just to the south, had a discovery hole in 2019. They hit 32 metres at 6% copper and 1 gram per tonne of gold. So, that is a massive, target that they were able to, discern from their exploration activities. And really what that changed for them as a company is once you get that sort of discovery hole, the world starts to re-rate you. Yeah. The majors re-rate you. So I think where would this head is that we need to take these excellent camps, these large areas, and start to narrow down through modern exploration techniques, identify targets, and get the drills on the ground. It's at the end of the drill bit that we will find the value. Yeah. And I think that's what we can tell the people that are watching us at the moment. Why are we sort of drifting along without any clear direction on price? I don't think we've been valued on what the potential is yet.
And you're a shareholder, aren't you?
I'm a shareholder. I'm a believer in this. I believe that we will... we've reduced a lot of the risks. We talked about Georgia. The geopolitical risk is gone. The ability for us to walk in now, drill a hole, hit something, discover something, and have ownership. To have a clear pathway to development over time, maybe. But we don't have to fear. The government of the day coming in and saying we want that back. We don't have to fear partners who just don't want you to succeed. Yeah. What we're left with is exploration risk, and we can manage that. Yeah. We can control our own destiny. So I think we are definitely starting to turn the corner.
One final question. We are pretty much halfway through 2022. What's in store for the rest of the year so far as you're concerned? What are you going to be able to provide investors as evidence that you're in the right direction?
Well, as I said, we're starting drilling within the next 2 weeks at the Homewood Bound target and some of the other Jindabyne licence areas. We have a decision to make then in August to take up and extend that agreement with the landholder. That's a tribute agreement, so we can extend it for another 18 months and continue to explore. That comes at a very nominal, cost to us. So it's not, large sums of money leaving our accounts. We are going to continue to pursue the high grade around Eclipse because that, as I said, is the most advanced project and one that we're most likely, I think, to be able to bring into a resource model that we can look to develop. We will be doing aeromagnetics and electromagnetic surveys across Pitfield in the next few weeks. That will give us a target to go on the ground with. Staveley, we hope to be on the ground in Staveley and in Walton towards the end of the year, possibly the third quarter, but more likely towards the end of this particular year, where we can get on the ground and start to do the groundwork we need before we start drilling.
Good weather at the end of the year.
It's always the weather in Australia doesn't tend to disrupt us as much as other parts of the world. That's interesting, but it does depend on crops. Yeah. And the interesting thing is a lot of the areas that we're now looking at is partially farmland. Right. So we work around with the farming communities as well.
Look, we've got to leave it there, but thanks indeed for joining us. It's a pleasure to be able to catch up with you, Jordan. And good to be able to see and be interested to see how things develop. Keep in touch.
Thank you very much.
Shaun, it's a pleasure. Thanks so much. Shaun Bunn is the Chief Executive of Empire Metals.